Welcome everybody, Richard Robbins here. I'm sitting here with Mr. Keith Roy, and he works in Vancouver, one of our great coaching clients, one of our trainers, does a lot of work for us. And obviously we got some new rules happening in BC in the real estate industry. I did a video about this not that long ago, so I want to do another one with Keith. I want to give you as much information as I can because this will probably affect many other provinces at some point. So it's important we're all up to speed on this. So first of all, who's making these changes? Let's get really clear.
Well, let's go back in time a little bit. Last year in British Columbia, the real estate market came under a lot of scrutiny because prices were accelerating so quickly.
Right.
When prices start to accelerate, some bad behavior entered the market.
Right.
The term called shadow flipping started to occur, where people were selling real estate contracts before they were closed, and multiple people were making profit. It was found that realtors had been involved in that and kind of undercut a couple people along the way to benefit a few others. Globe and Mail did a big investigation. Public gets upset. Provincial government is facing an election. They bring in a bunch of new suggestions through an independent advisory group, and the independent advisory group appoints a new superintendent of real estate. So governing in real estate in British Columbia now, you have the government sets the policy, the superintendent oversees that, directs council, which used to be controlled by realtors, but is now controlled by the superintendent. And so the council is bringing out these new rules on behalf of the superintendent. They're coming into effect March 15th, 2018.
Okay. So let's talk about exactly what they are.
Yeah, so I wrote some notes here. There's the big change is the end of dual agency.
Right.
And this is a big deal, and this is something that I think everybody can learn from. No longer will a realtor be able to represent a buyer and a seller in the same transaction. Some realtors do this. We see it in smaller towns, but they're going to eliminate it entirely in the province of British Columbia unless it's in a very small, remote, underserviced area.
What about if, like I know we'll talk about implied agency, but what if, basically you've explained yourself to the buyer if you have the listing and you're not representing the buyer and you explain to them you're representing the seller.
Yeah, you can still double-end a deal in that a buyer can be unrepresented, but it's a really fine line now, and there's new disclosures that are being brought out. So if I meet someone at an open house and they start telling me anything about themselves, I have to stop the conversation, give them a piece of paper, explain to them in writing the relationship that they're getting into, that I'm not their agent, that I fully represent the seller. This applies on the phone as well. So if someone phones on my listing and asks me a question that's anything beyond factual information, basically me reading a feature sheet to them, I have to pause the conversation, ask them for their email them this paperwork, confirm that they've received it in writing, and then phone them back and continue the conversation. So the net result of this is it's going to be difficult for realtors to convert sign calls and have conversations with people at open houses, but it's going to be bad for the consumer because the consumer is going to really struggle to get information about real estate beyond what's available on the internet.
Okay, so what happens if you're at an open house and that person wants to buy that listing?
Yeah, so if you're at an open house and an unrepresented buyer comes in and wants to buy the listing, you have to be very careful that that buyer doesn't share with you as the host agent or the designated agent of the seller any personal information that could put you in a conflict. You could end up in what is called implied agency, which is really just kind of forced agency. I didn't even want this person as a client. They came in, they told me that they have to buy a home within a month because they're getting kicked out, and they won the lottery so they can afford it and they love it. Well, now I'm kind of stuck in this weird situation where I know personal information about this person. I have an obligation to my seller, and apparently we're supposed to recuse ourselves as a listing agent from the deal entirely. We have to walk away. It's a double recusal rule.
Just a minute. What are you going to do with the listing?
You're supposed to. So the listing is actually held by the brokerage. So the way this rule is being interpreted and explained to realtors right now by the council is that I would say to my seller, I'm sorry, I've been forced into an agency relationship with the person who wants to buy your home. I can no longer help you. I can't help them. Someone from my office will be in touch to appoint a new agent. It's a really interesting problem. So what are the struggles? Well, I don't really want to do open houses anymore because there's a risk that I could have to fire my seller. But there's some huge opportunities out there now for realtors who are ready for it. And that's on the issue of buyer representation agreements, or in British Columbia we call them exclusive buyer agency agreements. Because now you can explain to your seller, You need to be careful out there because other realtors can't help you. It's going to be a struggle for you to search for real estate on your own. Let us do the work for you. Yeah. Let us go out and do the inquiries for you.
So what about, I've heard that teams have disbanded.
Yeah, we're seeing some teams disband because if you're a team working in a neighborhood and you have neighborhood dominance and a buyer comes into one of your open houses, let's say you have 25% market share. They're going to see you at some point. And if they're underrepresented, they may say, we want to work with you because you seem to have the early access to the new listings, you've got the information. Well, the buyer agent on that team can't represent you in the sale of any of those homes that your team has on the market. So we're seeing teams in British Columbia consider disbanding and working as independent agents who maybe share an assistant, but at no point are they representing people from different parts of the transaction.
So let's say this, somebody wants to buy one of your listings and you know those people, or maybe you sold them a house 3 houses ago. What happens?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. We could be in a multiple offer situation and a buyer could come in. Maybe I did a deal with you, Rich, 10 years ago. Your mother passed away, I sold her house with your family, and I provided you agency at that time. You've moved on, you've got your own buddy who's a realtor. I've got a listing here 10 years later. I've got 3 offers. You come in with your realtor, you make an offer. I'm presenting multiple offers. You could be the worst offer on the table. I would look at those offers and I would say, oh man, Richard Robbins, I did a deal with him 10 years ago. Unfortunately, my agency relationship goes on forever. Mr. Seller, I'm sorry. I cannot help you right now. You can't sell your house because I can't represent you and I control the listing. I'm taking these offers. I have to recuse myself, leave, go to my manager. My manager will appoint someone who at some point will come by and help you in this transaction. And this will kill the momentum of a real estate negotiation. So all of a sudden, a well-connected realtor is a liability. There's going to be some interesting pushback, I think, from the public when the public realizes that these changes that are designed entirely to support them. And this is all about consumer protection. And I'm a huge consumer protection advocate, but this is harmful to the consumer's choice in a real estate transaction. Ending dual agency, good idea. But banning, 10-year-old clients from buying listings that realtors hold is problematic.
No, but then agency, you say, is lifetime. And I've heard some confusion around this. Some people say it's not lifetime. There's a time limit agency.
Yeah, different jurisdictions seems to have different interpretations of this. The last directive I saw from the Real Estate Council, the duty of confidentiality and the fiduciary duty of agency is forever.
So what do you think about across Canada? Because this is BC. So what do you think is going to happen with the rest of the provinces?
I think Canada, other provinces have a lot to learn from British Columbia. If you want to know what the future of real estate legislation and governance is, you should pay very close attention to what's going on in British Columbia. We introduced a foreign buyer tax. Toronto introduces a foreign buyer tax. We start regulating our realtors. There's rumblings of realtor regulations in Toronto. The Vancouver board is under more scrutiny. The real estate agents in British Columbia are more scrutiny than anywhere else in North America, in the world, from what I've seen. You've traveled the world, I've traveled the world talking to realtors. This is a microcosm of the future. It's going to be the end of dual agency. Realtors need to get better at signing buyer representation agreements, for sure. And realtors are going to have to get more creative about finding their own clients because neighborhood dominance is now at a disadvantage. And repeat and referral business is going to be a big play.
Big play. Okay, anything else you want to add before we close this out?
Just make sure you know the rules because the fines in British Columbia, and that's the other thing, the fines in British Columbia are hundreds of thousands of dollars. Other jurisdictions for, small infractions are tens of thousands or, a few thousand. We have hundreds of thousands of dollars of fines in British Columbia for the realtor, the broker, and the brokerage. So get ready out there in the world, and if you're a part-timer, if you're giving real estate a try, get ready because this is going to become a very professional full-time career if you want to keep yourself and your clients safe.
Thank you.
Thank
you. Everybody watching this, here's what you got to do. Whether you agree or disagree with what's going on, we all have our opinions, but you have to understand it. Make sure you understand it so you're not putting yourself in a position, where you could be faced with one of these fines, and also that you're representing people properly. Mr. Keith Roy, thanks, buddy.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, appreciate it. Okay, we'll talk to y'all soon. Remember, it's a beautiful life, everybody. Make it count.